You cannot read the way you used to. You know this. You have known it for years. You blame your age. You blame your job. You tell yourself you'll fix it next week. You won't, because what you are calling a failure of discipline is not a failure of discipline. It was named precisely before you were born. In 1971, an economist sat down to write a sentence that would describe your life 50 years before you started living it. His name was Herbert Simon. He had already won what would later become the Nobel Prize in economics. He had never seen an email. He had never held a phone that fit in his hand. And he wrote this: "A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention." Read that again. He saw the whole thing before any of the machines existed. The strangest part isn't that he was right. The strangest part is how completely we walked into it anyway. You know the feeling. You picked up your phone to check one thing. 40 minutes later, you're somewhere else entirely. You don't remember deciding to go there. You don't remember choosing any of it. This isn't a moral failing. It isn't weakness. It isn't because you lack discipline. For almost 20 years, Dr. Gloria Mark, a professor of informatics at the University of California, Irvine, has been measuring something. She measures how long the average person looks at a single screen before switching to another one. In 2004, the average was 2 minutes and 30 seconds. By 2012, it had collapsed to 75 seconds. In her most recent measurements, it averages 47 seconds. The median is 40, meaning half of all observed attention windows last 40 seconds or less. Same researcher, same method, 2 decades. While the technology in our hands changed underneath us. This is not what your grandfather meant, so it changed. In the 1950s, a Harvard psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran an experiment that should haunt anyone who reaches for their phone. He found that pigeons pecked a lever most relentlessly, not when food appeared every time, not when food appeared on a schedule, but when food appeared at random, unpredictable rewards, delivered for a repeated motion. This is called variable ratio reinforcement. It produces the highest response rate and the strongest resistance to stopping of any reinforcement pattern ever tested in the history of psychology. It is also the architecture of every slot machine in Las Vegas. The anthropologist Natasha Dow-Scheel spent 15 years inside the Las Vegas slot machine industry. Her work documents what designers call the machine zone, a trance where you play only to keep playing. And the same designers, the same principles migrated directly into Silicon Valley. The pull to refresh gesture on your phone is not like a slot machine by accident. It is the same architecture, unpredictable reward, repeated motion. But long before any of this, nearly 2,000 years before, there was a Roman slave who became a philosopher. His name was Epictetus. He wrote a chapter called Simply on Attention, and in it, he warned of something the Stoics took with deadly seriousness. They called it prosoche, the continuous, vigilant guarding of the mind. For the Stoics, attention wasn't a productivity tool, it was the foundation of a moral life. The philosopher Pierre Hadot argued that prosoche is the fundamental Stoic spiritual attitude. Every other practice depends on it. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, not in a temple but in a tent, on military campaign. He wrote this: "Deal skillfully with your present impressions, so that nothing may steal into your mind which you have not adequately grasped." Notice the verb, steal. The Stoics didn't have apps. They had the noise of the Roman Forum, the flattery of court, the rumors of the marketplace, and they understood, 2,000 years before notification badges, what Skinner's pigeons would later prove in a laboratory. The unguarded mind is a mind that gets taken. Which brings us back to 1971, because here is what most people miss about the attention economy. The story we tell ourselves is that this was an accident, that clever engineers in Silicon Valley stumbled into addictive design around 2007. The iPhone, the like button. Nobody saw it coming. This is wrong. On every count. Herbert Simon, that economist, was writing in a paper called Designing Organizations for an Information-Rich World. He saw the structure. Abundant information must produce scarce attention, and scarce attention, he understood, would become a market. He coined a phrase for what was coming. He called it the attention economy. Before email, before the internet, before any of this. 2 years later, in 1973, two artists, the sculptor Richard Serra and Carlotta Faye Schoolman, bought airtime on television to broadcast something extraordinary. A 7-minute piece, plain text scrolling on a blue screen. The product of television, the text read, is the audience. You are the product of television. You are delivered to the advertiser, who is the customer. 37 years before someone said it about the internet, they said it about television. So when you blame yourself for being distracted, when you wonder why your focus collapsed, why you can't read the way you used to, why 40 seconds feels like the limit of your mind, understand this. The economist saw it in 1971. The artist named it in 1973. The slot machine engineers built the mechanism. The Silicon Valley designers gave it pockets and pulses and a place beside your bed. This is not a personal failing. It is the predictable output of a system that was visible to anyone who looked half a century ago. So, the question isn't really how we got here. The question is what to do with the knowledge that we were warned. The Stoics had a name for the practice, prosoche, vigilant attention. They understood it not as a productivity hack, but as something closer to sovereignty, the capacity to choose what enters your mind, the refusal to let your inner life be taken without consent. This is not nostalgia. The Stoics weren't peaceful monks meditating in silence. Marcus wrote on a battlefield. Epictetus was born a slave. They built the practice because life was loud and unstable and full of forces that wanted to claim them, just like ours. But here is what they could not have imagined. They lived in a world of merchants competing for their attention. We live in a world of merchants who have spent 50 years studying how to take it, with instruments more precise than anything Skinner built, refined by data they collect on you every hour while you sleep. So the real question is older than any of this. What is your attention worth? And to whom exactly are you giving it away? We name the merchants tonight, but naming a problem is not the same as having a practice for it. The Stoics appeared only briefly here. Next, we sit with them properly, with the people who built a medicine 2,000 years ago for a feeling we still have not learned to live with. Rooted